It's Adam again. Today we're going to be talking about episode 6, combat. So what is combat? Combat is when characters fight, be them among themselves or against NPCs that the storyteller throws against them. It's the official system from when we've moved from just roleplay to conflict resolution. It is, at its core, fighting. It's vampires fighting. So that is what combat is. You'll run into it a bit. Generally, at some point in a story, you're going to end up fighting someone, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of players that are just here for role-playing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Players can avoid combat as much as they like. I definitely understand it. It's very slow, it's meticulous, and can result in arguments and heated tempers quite frequently. Step 1 is definitely try to maintain your cool, be nice, courteous, and we're all here to have fun, to keep that in your mind as well. Tell a collaborative story. So the two major combats you're going to get into are called PvP, or player versus player, and PvE, player versus environment. PvP is when one player is engaging in combat with another character. PvE is when your character and perhaps a group of characters are engaging in a fight against a storyteller who has NPCs, narrator-played characters, antagonists, things for you to fight. That's what those two types of combats are. Some games really favor PvP. Some games really favor PvE. My game personally favors PvE. We try to be a very collaborative game that tells a story and doesn't want to focus as much on player versus player conflict. It can happen. We definitely still allow it, but it's not our focus. That's just an example of my game. Some games are the opposite. They tend to focus on running very little plot and prefer players interacting with other players and conflicting there. PvP and PvE can be interchangeable outside of combat. PvP just means player conflicting with another player. Not necessarily to kill another character, though it can happen. So combat, again, is once we've moved past the role-playing and are now going into my character is fighting yours physically, or mentally, or socially, or however have you. So the first step in any combat is what we call declarations. Declarations are your blood expenditures, the powers that you have active, items that you are using. This has all happened before combat even begins. You need to let a storyteller know what your character's basic intent is, what abilities and powers they have active, what items they are using, and what blood they have spent, or willpower if that comes up as well. Anything that you have to mark off on your sheet that you're expending, that's what declarations is. You're also going to declare at this point what your intent is, who you are going against, what you are doing, if you're hitting them with a sword, shooting them with a gun, punching them in the face, using a mental mind control power over them, what your intent is. Once declarations have been done, we'll move on to what's initiatives. And initiative is to determine who goes first and when. So how do you do that? So this is a little complicated. To determine who goes first and when, your first step is to determine the action that you're going to take. So the nature of your challenge. If you're going to punch someone, you need to determine what your traits bid on that is going to be. So you take your attributes, in this case physical, and then add any bonuses from items or powers to give you a number, up to whatever max is allowed by the game. So we'll say 30, because most games allow for 30. So if you have enough traits and everything, you're saying, I'm going to punch this guy, I have calling 30 traits on that challenge. So that sets your first number. Your next number is going to be what, if any, levels of celerity do you have, 1 through 5. If you have celerity 5 and you're bidding 30 traits, you would say, I'm going on a 5 celerity initiative at 30 traits. And everyone's going to have a variable number of numbers. Whoever has the highest numbers in those two categories, using celerity first before traits, oddly enough, if you have a higher celerity, you're just acting first. So if you have celerity 5 and a person has celerity 1, you're acting before the person with celerity 1. If you have equal levels of celerity, that's when you go to the traits to determine when they act. If you have equal traits and equal celerity, you're both acting at the same time. Now, a person with a higher initiative can choose when they go. They can choose to move to go slower. Some games allow you to do what's hold to contest, which means you choose to go at the same time as another person. And then you have to determine whoever wins that challenge, their action goes off and the other person's does not. That is called holding to contest. Some games allow it, some don't. You want to ask your storytellers about that. Some of them even run a different initiative system. Some allow you to use bonus traits for initiatives. Some allow you to only use named traits, meaning your attributes, or if you get like Feral Claws, which gives you a named physical trait, you can add that. You want to ask how they handle initiative in combat, but that's a general overview of initiatives itself. Okay, so everybody gets a normal action, one normal action. On your normal action, you can do any type of action. Mental, social, physical, blood magic, whatever you want to do. Anyone can do that on the normal action. The end of the round is considered when everyone's normal action is done. Now, people with celerity and other powers can get additional actions. This is actually considered by the book at the end of the round. After the end of normal actions, everybody gets to take their additional actions. Some powers in the book will say at the end of the round, X happens. Ask your storyteller if there's a variation to this in their house rules, what did they consider end of the round? By the book, again, the end of round is the end of the normal action for everyone. That is the end of the round by the book. Some games don't run it that way. You want to check. So additional actions, of course, go in order after the normal actions. So Swiftness, which is Celerity 2, gives you an extra action, and Legerity gives you an extra action, which is Celerity 4. So you might hear, okay, Swiftness actions, and then we check the initiatives and do this whole process all over again. Same with Legerity. Same with any power that gives additional action. Some simplify it by saying additional action 1, additional action 2, additional action 3. All of that. You check with the house rules once again on how additional actions work. But everybody gets a normal action. And on your additional actions, you can only do physical actions. Hit someone with a sword, punch them, shoot them with a gun, whatever you have. That can only be done on additional actions. So no blood magic on your celerity actions. You only get that on your normal one action. There are certain other powers that grant additional normal action. So if you hear someone say, I'll take my second additional normal action, it's because they have a power that allows them to do that. They'll take it immediately after their first normal action. So that's kind of the action economy of the system. And once that's all done, all the actions are resolved, all the challenges have been thrown, we're now on the next turn of combat. So you'll hear the terms action, round, and turn. You want to check with how the game defines them for them. Some games, like I said, run them differently. I'm only speaking by the book, which is end of the round is the end of normal. Turn is when everyone is done and we start again, if there's still actions to be done, if the combat has not been resolved. And lastly, we're going to kind of cover what I call combat maneuvers, which are some key tips for combat you'll see a lot. One of the ones I always recommend is grapple your opponent. Grappling shuts down a lot of things. They won't be able to obfuscate. They have difficulty running away from you. And that's just a physical challenge, generally relying on strength or dexterity to grab your opponent and hang on to them. A lot of powers require you to touch your opponent to affect them with things like to quell their beast, which is the most common, what we'll call combat maneuver. You'll see thrown around is to stop someone from being able to use willpower. And so there's a variety of what I call combat maneuvers. You'll hear withering a lot, which is discipline from Thanatosis, a discipline of the Semeti that is used to render a target's limb useless. These are what I kind of call combat maneuvers as well. That's the basics of LARP combat. Like I said, there's a lot of variety and variance due to powers and abilities. But at the core of it, remember, you get one shot every round to generally do something special besides punch or hit someone. And you want to focus on what your character's special at in combat on that normal action. And if you have extra actions, you're going to focus on punching or hitting them or things like that. So yeah, definitely talk to your more senior players if you want some more tips and tricks on combat. I know it can be, like I said, very frightening and people want to avoid it and it takes forever. It is very annoying. Most people just kind of want to go very fast and get through it. It can be very intense if it's a player versus another player and you're intending to kill another character. While I personally believe those events should be rare, they are unfortunately sometimes not. They happen. So nobody really likes combat. but it is an unfortunate necessity of the system for having some sort of conflict resolution. So I hope this was helpful and gave you a brief rundown on combat. And yeah, I'll see you on the next episode where we're going to cover merits. Bye.